All right, welcome back. Today we're going to be looking at part of the process for how I've been making the MK Marines. Now we're going to start here with Rain because this happened to be the one I was working on at the time, and we're going to use Pro Acrylic Dark Purple. We're going to lay down a base coat over all the sections that are going to be purple. In keeping with the ninja theme from the older designs, my goal is always to have the mask, the knee pads, the elbow, forearm guard, as well as any of the cloth to be the color of whatever ninja it is that I'm currently working on. Now, Rain is an interesting exception here because he doesn't have the ninja cloth. He has this cloak, so his cloak gets to be purple, but usually it's the ninja tabards, the mask, the shins, and the forearm guards that get the color of whatever ninja it is that I'm currently working on. With that out of the way, I'm going to take the same Pro Acrylic Dark Purple and mix it 50-50 with Pro Acrylic Royal Purple. It's a much lighter purple. We're going to do right about a 50-50 mix, but I may end up adding a little or taking a little as I go. We're going to water it down a little bit so it's nice and thin, and we're going to use this on all of the higher parts. And what I'll do is as I continue, I'll move more and more towards the lighter purple to make a gradient of shadow. I also make sure I have a little drop of water so that I can constantly adjust the paint as necessary. Once I've got a nice smooth middle ground color, I'll go ahead and get started. Now we're going to be putting highlights on this, but we're not going to be doing the more traditional edge highlighting. We're going to be doing large, mostly fat highlights so that we can really create some distinction in where the shadows are. So now following that same pattern, we're going to introduce some Ivory by Vallejo, and we're going to mix the Ivory with the 50-50 mix that we just used, and this is going to make our much lighter color. What you'll see here is I'm just going to kind of play with it a little bit, make sure it's thin enough, make sure it's purple enough. I want to make sure that the color I get is right about where I want it to be. Once I'm happy with it, I'll start applying it. Now the goal here will be to apply it in less than the previous, but not quite an edge yet. And what I'll do is I'll just go through here and add these highlights in. And then as I do it, if I decide that it needs to get a little lighter or a little darker, I'll stay over here on my palette and I'll just kind of keep messing with it until I find a spot that I'm happy with. I'm not going to go as high with these highlights, so I'm going to try to leave some more of that other highlight, the 50-50 mix, just to kind of show off. But I am going to try to use this as a way to show off the various features that were sculpted into this miniature. I will use some of it as an edge highlight, you see here, and occasionally what I'll do is I'll run my finger over it if I feel like the highlight's too thick, and that usually gets rid of most of it and leaves just the edge as long as I'm careful with it. Then I'll continue to lighten it up and use a smaller brush to go in and do some actual edge highlighting so that I have some nice thin lines where I want the highest creases to be, just kind of show off more of that sculpted detail. I'll also wash it with a dark purple and maybe even a black if necessary, just to make sure that it all blends together well, and I'll just go back and forth with this process until I get it where I want it to be. Being pretty happy with that, I'm going to go ahead and move over to dark neutral gray, which is going to act as my black. And I'm just going to kind of base coat everything else in this black. I'll go through after and put some wash in it and maybe even a couple of light highlights, just using this color plus a little bit of ivory. But for these ninjas, the main point is to make sure that the stuff that's not the color of the ninja is a flat black. Now, straight black is too black, and you've probably heard me say this before, but you don't want true black. You want off gray because then you can highlight it and you can shade it. Straight black looks super weird and unnatural, and I try to avoid it as much as I can. Now, I'm not going to bother you with the rest of this because the main event is that cloak, but I'll go through and wash this and highlight it, and then I'll go ahead and take you over to what it looked like when it was done.